Hello and welcome to Taxed and Wasted by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance.
I'm Emilio Garcia.
And I'm Brian Marlowe, the president of space.
Done. Yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, so after that glorious intro to this very serious podcast by a very serious advocacy group.
We're allowed to have fun.
We do have fun. We have a lot of fun. Something that has been a lot of fun for a lot of Australians recently, over the last few days, has been the American election. And everyone's super excited about it. Everyone has these special opinions and predictions.
I must. No, we definitely didn't have the entire staff watching the election.
Well, we worked that day.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
did work the whole day. Well, the thing is, and obviously I'm American. I love the American political scene. Everyone who is kind of a political junkie is into American politics. But one of the things that we want to talk about today is, do you think that it's odd that many Australians are more interested or seem to be more interested in American politics than in Australian politics?
Yeah, I know. I say that with some humility, given that I was watching every election result come in every different state and like crunching numbers and being an absolute nerd. But that's because I don't have a life. I think that kind of stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
For your average person out there, I think it's fair to say that it's not necessarily good for Australians to be so consumed by what's happening in America. Now, that's not to deny. Look, someone will be like, "Oh, but America's the greatest superpower," and all that kind of stuff. Yes, they are. Their foreign policy matters. Their economic policies matter.
Sure.
Their trade policies with us, they're really important. But it seems to be the case where Australians who aren't politically engaged will know more about, I don't know,
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, they'll know more about Nancy Pelosi and what she's doing, when it comes to regulations on automobiles or something like that, than what our own Prime Minister and Treasurer are doing with their own tax policy that literally affects their bottom dollar.
That's correct.
And I don't think that's the fault of Australians. I think that's the fault of the media cycle here in Australia, where we just follow America constantly. And just pump it out onto the airwaves. Like this whole week, has anyone really heard anything about, I don't know, that pandemic that we shut down?
Do you remember? Yeah.
It's all been around the US election. Now, granted, it's a very tight race. Sure. There's all kinds of stuff happening on both sides. Trump's being verbose. Biden is forgetting his daughter's name.
Come on, man.
It's weird. I'm not saying there should be no coverage. I just think that people need to realize that we have no say in what happens in America.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with watching it from afar and going, wow, that's really interesting. If you're really politically inclined like we are, sure, deep dive into the math and then, bore your girlfriend with statistics until she rolls her eyes and tells you to shut up.
Are you speaking from experience?
But maybe. But bear in mind that what happens here policy-wise is really important.
Here's my question. If you're an Australian politician, and you're passing laws such as the Access and Digital Assistance Act.
Yeah, contentious stuff.
Yeah. Aren't you very benefited by the fact that Australian political junkies won't really spend that much time? Or Australian political junkies who do spend a lot of time don't have a captive audience to listen to every single thing that you're doing?
Every broadcaster right now, even our national broadcaster, they are pretty much on 24/7 US election watch.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there are bills that could potentially go through. There are spending measures. There are all these kinds of announcements that are getting the analysis they really deserve.
Correct.
To a wider audience. You spoke about this. I forget the exact terminology, the exact name of the bill, but it was like a digital access bill that essentially forced digital companies here in Australia to allow the AFP and I think even ASIO to have back-end access to their information, and if they, based on spurious grounds, and if that person working at the business declined, they could potentially be arrested.
Well, they could go to jail, and if they told their boss about it, they would
could
also
be arrested and go to jail. Yeah. Now, there was some oversight into that and some scrutiny into that. But that affects us way more than what happens between two 70-year-olds.
Yes.
Running for president.
Correct.
So yeah, I think you're right in the assessment that we really need to be more focused on what happens here in Australia. don't think that's an issue of the Australian people. I think that's an issue of the media that pumps it out.
And so I think there has to be a few things. I think if Australians start to take more interest in politics from Australia, the media follows the money.
Correct.
And so if we start to make politics more interesting, or rather we start to take more of an interest, then I think the media is going to start to cover it more.
Yep.
Because I find it almost insane that it seems to be that we're spending more time on something that Joe Biden said yesterday than the fact that the guy from the guy who's heading Victoria may have given HIV to 200 people.
Yeah.
That to me, as a domestic story, is far more significant than what's happening over there.
Yes.
So I think that we just want to talk about that quickly because politicians are getting a lot of help and are very assisted and have far more power if you're not interested in what they're doing.
That's correct.
So let's strangle them a little
Having
bit more.
said that, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to be opening my phone and looking at every single statistic around the US election because I'm a nerd.
Yes. Hobbies are fun.
Yes.
I also do.
Yes.
Speaking of hobbies that are expensive, not that are expensive, but this one is. Western Sydney Airport decided to spend a little money, didn't they?
They did.
And it's a really good reason.
They decided to spend someone else's money, being the taxpayers' money.
Our money. But it's for a good reason. It's very logical. So, an experience center is going to be put in the new airport that costs $10 million. And the experience center is, I don't know, a center for experiences within the airport.
What?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. It's an experience center within the airport.
What's an experience center?
It's a center where there are experiences. Or an experience.
What kind of experiences?
I have no idea. They haven't explained it well. But, Brian, it's okay. Because it's meant to attract visitors, don't you know?
To the airport?
Yes. Well, wait. When you travel, obviously you're traveling to see the airport, right? You're not working to get through the airport as fast as possible.
No, seriously. So...
We didn't plan this. He's actually very stressed.
No, I just want to work through the logic of this because I've seen some stupid government spending.
Yep.
So we have the airport that people go to literally to leave. Mm-hmm. You like when you get to an airport, it's to leave the airport. Yes. Whichever way you're going. You don't go to the airport
to be there.
To be there, unless you work there.
Yeah.
And they're building a room to have experiences in, which we don't know what those experiences are.
I haven't really explained it very well.
And the aim is not for people going through the airport to get out of the airport. Yeah. It's to take other people that aren't flying to the airport.
Correct. I'm going to do some real-time Googling to see if they've expanded on what it is. Luckily it's also really modernist and ugly and seemingly pretty small. But, okay, what is it supposed to be in the first year of operation? A tourist attraction.
Yeah, so they're saying it's a tourist attraction. So they want people to not go to Darling Harbour, not go to Sydney Harbour, not go to, I don't know, Manly, Bondi, the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge. They don't want anyone to do that. They want them to go back to the airport that they just came to.
Yes.
To look at a room.
Yeah, in the airport.
In the airport to have an experience in.
So a reporter asked our Prime Minister, do you really think they would come to visit for that room? And his answer is, yeah, sure, why not? I think
he said, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. But they're not.
Do this podcast.
They're not telling me what it is.
I can't do this podcast. I'm done. This is fake. This can't be real.
I know. It's incredible. And so,
what's the next subject? That's bullshit. Fuck. Nah, we're putting stuff out on that. That's ridiculous. Are you serious?
Yeah. I'm quite sure I briefed you on this, but
no, you told me you did your thing where you told me things like skin deep. You're like, oh, they're building a thing at the airport for $10 million and it's overpriced. So I was like, oh.
So you thought it was going to be like an airport, like an airplane hangar?
I don't know. I thought it'd be a $10 million McDonald's cafe or something that somehow the government funded.
At least you get
you get the experience of delicious McDonald's.
Let me ask you a question. With the current Sydney airport, have you ever gone and seen it super full and said, gosh, they should really open another one? Because
I don't... I don't even know what Sydney Airport looks like, and I go there all the time. Well, not anymore because of lockdowns.
Right.
But when I was traveling, mate, I'm not looking at the airport.
Yeah, you kind of dissociate.
Tunnel vision. I walk through it because it's shit.
Yeah.
I get on my plane. I land in places that aren't as good as Sydney, and then
you exit the airport quickly.
And then I exit that airport as quickly as I entered.
Or do you go to an employee and say, like, excuse me,
I need an experience.
Are there any interesting attractions at this airport?
Specifically, where I can get an Uber to get the fuck out of this airport.
All right. Moving on, really quick. We have 4 minutes left.
I can't.
I think we're gonna have to close the.
What was what was the other subject?
So I wanted you to explain to me how coal subsidies work.
Yeah, look, let's just move on. I got call it 90 seconds. Okay, so a lot of left wingers like to claim that the coal industry is heavily subsidised. Now, every energy producer is subsidised to some extent. We're not denying that coal gets some form of subsidy.
Yeah.
But one of the things that left wingers like to do is lie. And how they frame coal subsidies is they go, well, they get all these tax rebates, and a tax cut is a subsidy. One, a tax cut is not a subsidy; it's allowing you to keep more of your own money.
Correct.
Separate to that, though, this is how the tax cut that left wingers call a subsidy works. Coal power stations, coal mines, they develop their own land. So they buy a block of land, they build everything on that land.
Yep.
They then have construction equipment, trucks, transportation. They have generators, all these sorts of things that consume petrol, and they have their own roads that they've built to get to and from the coal mine, to take stuff to the coal-fired power plant, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they've built all those themselves, and in the financial year, they pay to the ATO a whole bunch of taxes, income taxes, payroll taxes. But on top of that, they pay things like the fuel excise.
Right.
Now, the fuel excise is there, supposedly, to cover the cost of roads and other infrastructure that we, as members of the general public, use.
Right.
But they're not using those roads. They're using roads and infrastructure that they've built themselves.
Right.
So at the end of the financial year, they go, I've paid you $10 million in fuel excise,
right.
$8 million of which was related to our own roads,
right.
Only $2 million of which was trucking the stuff between, distribution centres and whatnot.
Right.
So I want to refund on the stuff that I never used.
Sure.
And the tax office goes, yeah, you never used it. Here's money back.
Makes sense.
And left-wingers say that that's a subsidy. No, it's not a subsidy. It's a tax cut for them not using the things that they get taxed for.
Right. Well, it's actually just, the government's holding money that they don't have a legitimate claim to.
Correct.
Can I ask you a question? Kind of unrelated, but still related. So the fuel excise is to cover roads, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what taxes are supposed to be for?
Yes.
Because I say, well, why don't we cut taxes?
And then people say, well, who would build the roads?
Right. It's like, well, I'm paying an excise for that.
Yeah, well, an excise is a tax.
The fuel excise, rather.
Yeah, but an excise is a tax. So look, the fuel excise is supposed to cover the costs of maintaining roads and things like that, but then the separation is, well, what are registration fees for? And all the other associated fees when you own a vehicle.
Yeah.
And then when you actually look at how fuel excise is used, about 75% of it goes into general revenue. Only a quarter of it actually goes back to use on the roads, which would explain why most of our roads are so terrible.
Yeah.
So the government says to you, you need to pay this excise because we need to maintain the roads that you're using, and also pay registration fees and all these other things, and your income tax.
Yeah.
But the money that we accrue to fix the roads, only a quarter of it will go towards that. The rest will go to all the other stuff. Yeah. It's an absolute schmozzle.
Yeah. It seems ridiculous, but I heard recently that it turns out that pushing tax cuts, are a far-right initiative.
Oh, yeah.
So we probably shouldn't push on that.
I think the Guardian or something.
Yeah, we don't want to be far-right wingers, and we also don't want to go overtime on this podcast, so we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. There's also a video version on Facebook and YouTube. You can watch us there as well. And if you haven't become a member already, please become a member at taxpayers.org.au. .org.au. to remember
Maybe
a lot.
you need to go to the experience center
I
when our website
do. I
is.
need to relax. So taxpayers.org.au, you can become a member there. You get lots of great perks. This has been Taxed and Wasted by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. We'll see you next time.
See you later.